Everyone to This Week in Hospitality Digital Marketing live show number 128. I think we're going to run out of numbers eventually because we just keep escalating it. With me is my wonderful co-host who are going to cover for me today, Mr. Tim Peter from Tim Peter and Associates, Mr. Robert Cole from Rock Cheetah, and the Schroeder's cat of us all, no, Mr. Edward St Onge from Flip2, who believes that unless he's actually on the show doesn't exist because, as it's Schroeder's cat, it doesn't have to be, it has to be measurable first. But
Ed always thinks outside the box because everything.
well played, Mr. Robert. Touche. With that, I'm going to go over and make sure that I am not the sole administrator to this process. Get everybody turned on. And Mr. Roberts, since you were generous enough to put the topics together for us, and because you are covering for me so I can duck back out, I'm going to leave it over to you, all three of you gentlemen.
Well,
and
where are you going, Lauren? We're lost. Our leader, we don't know what to do.
I doubt that very seriously. I have to go back to where I had just left, and it's unfortunately it's the first time in 2.5 years that I actually have something that I can't get out of that's exactly at this time. So I was able to duck away for about 15 minutes. Yes, and I sincerely appreciate it.
Happens to me only once in a while.
Right. It's always a privilege.
Ed can't make faces. He wasn't here last week, so
what?
That's right,
I was here in spirit.
He was here in spirit.
I was commenting on Stuart's shirt.
That's true.
That's true.
Right.
That's true. You
amazing
were with that. You were with that. We did. Valen has asked to come back whenever she gets the chance. Right now, unfortunately, she is taking vacation on a mountain. Is the best, I guess, out of her email.
Can't say unfortunately and taking vacation in the same sentence. Okay.
Okay.
With no disrespect to our dear friend Valen, especially in the third week of January.
Oh, by the way, I won't be here next week because I'm going on vacation.
Now I think Holly's floating
the fourth week in January, so I mean I waited.
Yeah, exactly.
And part of the indoctrination for Valen should be the realization now for not showing up, she gets a bunch of reviews.
Yeah, she does.
And considering this is the third vacation she's taken so far this year, I mean that's really I think on top.
Yeah, and I think that I think Darlene is also going to try to join us as well, and then I appreciate Holly's just jumping on with us as well. But I think
oh my goodness,
I think Darlene's going to join with us. Hey, Holly.
We'll trade Lauren for Holly any day.
And
we say hi, and did you all see the face Holly made when we said hi? She's like,
she can't.
Yeah, why did I do this?
I think she has an audio.
Regretting this decision.
Can we hear her? No, still can't.
Hear you, Holly? Oh, Holly. Oh, you were frozen. Now you're unfrozen.
Are you hearing us, Holly? What's a show without technicalities? I mean, really, honestly.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, there's not a show without technical difficulties.
Show 128, and yet we still have not figured out how to run.
Show 128, and we're still on the technical side of issues.
The same one every time.
Yeah, the same one.
This week in hospitality digital marketing in data.
She's left the room to come back again. So, with that, gentlemen, I am going to
good luck.
Bow out. Thank you so very much. And where do I get to shut? I'm just going to shut off my camera and microphone. I'll leave a dead space for me for right now because I'm afraid about Facebook. I'm not certain about the Facebook hosting that if I step, the Facebook dies, which is why I did that. So I'm going to just shut everything off.
It's Schrodinger's Facebook.
Schrodinger's Facebook. All right. I'll be an icon to the side, I guess. I don't know. We'll see. Here we go.
If your computer locks, that's going to be really interesting.
Yes,
All right.
will.
All right. Fantastic.
So, gentlemen,
what's in the news this week?
Hey, what would people like to talk about? I always generate
I
10
like
12 topics.
the very first one on the list, Wyndham Worldwide purchasing the franchise and management contracts of La Quinta.
Yeah.
So I'll jump in first because, as you guys know, I don't really talk about Wyndham for obvious reasons, right? Full disclosure, I'm a shareholder. My wife works there, so to say I have conflicts doesn't even begin to cover this. With that said, I think more generally, I mean, we've talked about it on the show a lot, how much consolidation we have been seeing. I think this just continues the trend. I think we are far from done. I would imagine, and I'm sure we'll talk about this in a little bit, but I imagine Hyatt is looking over their shoulders very interestingly right these days at somebody. I don't know who by any stretch, but that's going to be a big deal. And the smaller companies, and it's weird to talk about Hyatt as a smaller company. It's weird to talk about, you start to talk about IHG as a smaller company almost, and Choice as a smaller company. Relative to Marriott and relative to Wyndham and relative to Hilton. I think that's a real challenge for them as they go forward. So I think we're going to see a lot more consolidation.
Well, see, I actually have a different point of view on this than you, Tim. I actually think that this is a sign of the position that Wyndham has put themselves in. They have a competitive advantage against Marriott. They have a competitive advantage against Hilton. What's that competitive advantage? They know who they are.
Right.
And how do we know they know who they are? Because they're focused on the areas that the other brands are weak, which is core infrastructure. So why does that matter? Well, if you're going to go acquiring companies, one of the things you want to know is that you can make more money on that operation than the previous owner did. One of the ways you do that is by being a better operator and understanding your focus. What did Wyndham do? Wyndham overhauled their core infrastructure, going with the Sabre CRS and now PMS suite to have an architecture that is just better than the other brands. Well, what does that mean? That means Wyndham can board La Quinta in a very easy way and make more money on the same exact operation that La Quinta has than the people who owned La Quinta previously. And it's because they are better at operating, because they now understand what an asset-light brand is. And an asset-light brand needs to be better at CRS and PMS and marketing and loyalty. And if you look at where Wyndham has focused over the past how many years, it's been on the things that you need to be best at if you're going to be an asset-light brand.
Well, and if I can add one thing to that, again, I don't want to get into the specifics of Wyndham today for obvious reasons. I will talk about the specifics of Wyndham when I was there. I think a reason why they're good at that, and I would certainly acknowledge that fact. I don't think I'm treading into conflict areas by saying that. But I think one of the reasons they're good at it is that's what they've always been, right? Wyndham grew up out of Cendant. Cendant at its core was a franchising company, right, which had its pros and cons. They weren't particularly good hotel operators. They weren't even really in the hotel business technically.
They were deal guys.
In the days when I first started working there, right? They bought brands and they franchised them to people. Most people don't realize, in addition to the 15 brands or whatever it was we had when I was there. So Days Inn, Nights Inn, Super 8, Ramada, Howard Johnson, Travelodge, AmeriHost, Wingate Inns. I'm forgetting a bunch, right? Right, a bunch. In addition to those, they also owned Avis and Budget Rent-A-Car. They also owned Coldwell Banker and Century 21 and Better Homes and Gardens Real Estate. They also owned Jackson Hewitt Tax Preparation Services, right? They were a franchising company was what they were. So asset light is in their core DNA. They're really good at that because that's where they grew up. They've become a good hotel company, but they always have been an asset light, build a brand, sell a brand to hotel owners, maybe operators, and obviously they've been growing their management capabilities, and with this they quadruple the scale of their management capabilities. I do think it's a good move, and I do think it plays to their strengths from that perspective.
Yeah.
And at that time, also, they were generating about $2.5 billion in free cash flow per year from those franchise which gives you a lot of flexibility to do those deals.
Especially when you're not paying real estate tax.
That's
exactly right. That's exactly right.
But the other there are actually 2 points I'd like to make. One is, Ed, you made the mention of them being able to onboard groups fairly easily. That is because of Tim's wife, largely.
Yes. She is an expert
that is a
very
Tammy
large
thing.
portfolios and boarding them onto CRS and PMS and
things most people would lack the courage to do.
Yep.
So.
Now I'll definitely verge into conflict. You're damn right, Pete.
Hey, listen,
She's never been on the show.
Yeah, why hasn't she been? Oh, you know what? Tim's afraid. Don't ask him back.
No. Many years ago, Tammy worked for an organization that I was a leader in, and those restraining orders are still in effect. It was really, really long time. So.
Well, here's the thing. I said this to Tammy, I think a year and a half ago when we were chatting on, the looming big.
She's gonna hate this later, by the way. I
know.
cannot tell you how much.
But I actually said to her, as someone who cares about a lot of the same things she cares about, I said, what's neat is when she comes out the other end of this project, she will have moved more hotels onto a single platform than any other person in our industry, probably in history. 9,000 hotels moved from existing core infrastructures to this new infrastructure
in process.
Right.
Well, I said to her back then, when you're done, you will be the most experienced person in the world on leading a project like this. And that's really neat. And now you're adding the 1,000 La Quintas to that. So here's the next question. Are we going to be adding Hyatt to that? Are we going to be adding Omni to that? Who's next? And that's the interesting thing is through this very, and I agree with Robert, I don't think a lot of people would have volunteered to be the person who had to do that.
I think Wyndham, I'm going to, again, super conflicts here, and I obviously know nothing. I want to be really clear about this from that perspective. I'm going to tell you as an observer, they just spent $2 billion and they're about to spin off from a larger organization and go public and the like. I doubt Wyndham's going to get back in the game right away unless it's, what they like to call a tuck-in acquisition. Of course, when you're 9,000 properties strong, right? When you got 9,000 properties, tuck-in doesn't mean to them what it means to everybody else, right?
Which certainly could be a Red Roof, an Omni, or any of these other groups.
Sure.
When you're talking about groups smaller than 1,000 properties, that's like most of the industry.
What is funny about Wyndham, and I think Marriott has this benefit and problem today, and I think Hilton has this benefit and problem today, is people don't realize how big is, right? During my tenure there, we did a launch of something that did not go well. One of the true disasters of my career, where we blew something up kind of badly. And to put this in context, we pissed off about 10% of our franchisee base. And the people we pissed off, only 10%. We got it 90% right? But this was an epic disaster within the company, because by pissing off 10% of our franchisee base, we actually pissed off more hoteliers than existed in any other brand in the industry by far. We had 750 angry hotel owners to deal with, and that was bigger than just about every other brand anywhere at the time, and that was 10% of our base.
Right.
What'd you do?
You apologize and you try to make it better, right? And
no, what did you do?
He became a consultant.
No. No. That was years before that. But that's a good line. But that's a good line. That's a very good line. No, we launched new websites in that era. Again, not a hotel operation. We were a franchising company. Our company position was we were not accountable for the content on the websites, a position that I strenuously argued against and lost at every opportunity, right? And we launched a whole bunch of new websites. A whole bunch of franchisees saw some pretty awful content in a new wrapper and claimed we broke all their content. My personal favorite story from that time, this was a great one, was a franchisee who was furious because it showed on his property description that all the rooms had 14-inch televisions or 13-inch televisions. Or the like.
Wow.
And he had 17-inch televisions. Oh. And that was his sole complaint, was somehow in launching the new website, we'd gone through and only changed the dimensions of the TVs for his property somehow with the new redesign, right? And it was like, no, it always said that. You just now saw it in a new frame and realized how ugly the picture is. And to be honest, it was a great learning experience for Wyndham, Ascendant at the time. Let's be fair, because it was Ascendant then. Because I think it woke them up to the fact that content is a strategic product, and we need to take more ownership of that. But it took the failure to get us there. And that's what we did. We didn't do anything wrong. The websites worked. Everything was great. I mean, there were no problems. But we enraged about 750 property owners because their content was really, really, really bad.
You can't win big if you can't fail big.
Right. Exactly right. Exactly right.
Valuable.
That's exactly right.
But that's a challenge with the size of large organizations like that, because those owners need to be responsible for their content, and if they aren't, they're hurting themselves. But again, it's kind of blaming the large organization.
And to just to close out that story, because just to give another example of where large has its own positives and it has its own negatives. We did this immense content push. We basically had to rally the whole field organization around getting out to all their properties, making sure all the content was great everywhere. And when we finally agreed everything was good enough to relaunch the websites, we still had about 200 hotels who never responded to us, who'd never done anything, and frankly never noticed. And again, that was a really big brand all by itself. It was just the 200 least engaged owners in the system at the time.
Right.
So where do you think, in terms of content, where do you think that ranks in the top 6 things that hoteliers are care about? You think
from a digital perspective, 0 through 5.
Why is that, you think?
Because customers have, we've talked about this on the show a lot. Customers have questions and we need to answer them. And if you don't answer them, they'll go find somebody else who will, and then they'll go book somebody else.
Oh.
And it needs to be accurate. And absence of information is bad. Actually, back in the days, Darlene, when we were both at Sabre, I had a little item that got onto Bob Crandall's weekly staff meeting list, which nobody wants, and certainly nobody would want a carryover item from week to week. That was very, very bad for anyone's career there. But it was an issue of I think it was like a Hampton Inn or something like that at the Spokane, Washington airport that had an airport shuttle, but it wasn't listed, and a travel agent somewhere booked somebody who, their client took a taxi and had to pay $4 or a nominal amount, and was incensed and wrote to Crandall, right? This is wrong. Sabre sucks. Bad information. My client is just, I might lose them. And of course the edict was fix that. Well, right. Sabre can't just fix that.
How many hotels were on Sabre at that time, Robert?
I think we had probably well over 40,000. We might not have cleared 50,000 at that point.
Right.
But we were largest, certainly the largest in the industry. And we were booking half of the world's automated hotel transactions at that time, right? So we go to the Hilton, all these guys, please fix this, talk to the hotel. We don't know why they cannot get it done. So I think the statute of limitations is over. I fixed it.
They probably had to
I violated Sabre protocol. I violated the agreements with the hotel company. They could, it was like the Peace Corps trying to help people help themselves, and just rejection.
And ironically, in time spent, more money was spent on that problem than some companies spend in a year.
Begging, pleading. So it was just like, you know what? We're going to fix. We knew that they did have that. There was no question. It was just like, no, you can't do. All the people going. It's like, I'm going to do this. I will take if they want to fire me for getting the information right, please go do that. Let's just get on with our lives, change the little, and it was a 1-bit field. I mean, literally changing a 0 to a 1.
Right.
So, what's funny about this is like this exact issue is why OTAs came to power.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Because what was the thing OTAs understood more than anyone else at the time was they should not let the hotel define what the content is, that they had their own teams who wrote the content to market the hotel. And in most cases, it was more accurate, a better description, and it focused more on the things that travelers cared about. And that's actually how OTAs won their spot in the consumer path.
Absolutely. Expedia at the beginning,
exactly right.
Which was when under Microsoft had 4
right now, and it came out with a new right. They just came out with this new content initiative to improve content all over the place because, again, they're saying we need to get to the next step. We need to take the content the next level deeper. And if you're a hotel operator and Expedia is saying we need better content, what do you think that tells you about what's important to consumers online? Holly, you had a question or a comment.
Yeah, I don't know about that because I seem to recall it was ease of booking. I mean, they were smart about figuring out how to make it easy to book.
That was
a little later, actually.
That was one of the later ingredients. In the beginning, you could actually learn more about a hotel on an OTA than you could through any source of the hotel's marketing, because the hotels, all they did early day of websites was take whatever their pamphlet was for the hotel and just transcribe that content into a web page.
Oh, and it was worse than that. A lot of the online travel agencies, and particularly Travelocity, because I was there at its birth, just took the content from Sabre. Well, okay, here's a little thing, and the statute of limitations. It's still kind of like that. Sabre has a 6-bit operating system, and you need 8 bits for lowercase letters. Okay, just think about that. Very fast, very reliable. Very inflexible. Also, that information is stored in the BAS, which is a term that Darlene is very fond of, because Darlene was in the air side. So, she was in the group that was generating $2.2 billion. While hotels we were up there at about 50 million, right? So, but anyway, it's in the BAS.
At the hotel cash register then.
Yeah, exactly. But the BAS is the acronym for the basic air segment. That is what the hotel content was stored in. So it was all caps. It was limited information. It was designed for travel agents who, had some expertise of what was going on. There were abbreviations, and actually there were, best practices to kind of optimize this content for travel agents, which was not the same optimization for travelers. And that would just get posted up there, and it was just gobbledygook crap, little abbreviations for, CXL and, all sorts of, cancellation and deposit terms and just crap that was totally indecipherable from the average consumer. And Expedia saw that, and again, being Microsoft, spent huge resources make that stuff right, because the hoteliers wouldn't help themselves. They didn't know how. They didn't have the time. They didn't have the staff, and so they had cartographers. They had
online. There were a ton of factors, right? Another thing to be aware was they spent heavily on marketing in ways that, candidly, one of the things people forget is when Expedia was charging 25% of reservation, they were making more per reservation than the brands were, with none of the operational cost, right?
And by the way,
they're making 25%.
It was 30. It was 33%.
Well, right. Absolutely, right. Absolutely. So they're making 25, 30, 35% on a booking versus the franchisors rather, who were making 7.75%, right? Mm-hmm. It made a big difference in terms of what people could do and what people got. Our job, my most frustrating thing about my time at Wyndham, and it wasn't anything to do with Wyndham, it had everything to do with where the industry was at the time. I was there 2001 to 2007, to early 2007, just to put some context on this. The frustrating thing was we were a franchise sales company for a big chunk of that, not a hotel company. And online, nobody cared about. In the earliest days there, my budget came from the brands, right? It was an allocation from each brand individually. And I literally had a brand manager tell me once, just to give you a context of when this was 2002, 2003, we were going around hat in hand trying to get some money to do some additional online work. And I had somebody tell me, "Are you kidding me? I can take that amount of money." It was like 20 grand or something like that. 20 grand I was trying to get. And I was told, I can take that money and buy a billboard on Route 80 and put more heads in beds than your little websites ever will. Right? And whereas Expedia, what was their job? Running websites to get people to, find, book, and consume traffic.
By the way, you need to give that person a phone call today and remind them that they use the word ever.
Oh, I know.
One of the things that Expedia did early on, I remember sitting, I think it was Focusrite, and a guy by the name of Rich Barton, who started Expedia, right? He was speaking, and he said something that at the time seemed so profound, and that was, he had this slideshow of he and his family going on vacation, and he shows them at the airport and getting on the airplane, sitting in the seat, and he's narrating the story along the way, and everybody's, bored. And then he takes the family to this, it might have been Hawaii or something, and the kids are in the pool, and they're having a great time, and the family's all together having fun. And the essence of the story was the travel experience, perhaps back in the day, the airline piece of the trip was a critical part of it, of the experience, but today that isn't the case. And I think that's what Expedia got their heads around before anybody else did, back to our comments earlier about this is what consumers cared about, and Expedia figured that out early on.
Yeah, I'll tell you, one of my most eye-opening things for me, and this was early days, this is probably 2002, maybe 2003, but this is relatively early times. No, it must have been a little later because there was Wi-Fi, right? So maybe it's 2004, but nonetheless, I was standing in a hotel lobby. I was actually getting ready to check in, and there was a guy in front of me who was clearly a gray collar guy, sales guy, schlepping all over the Southwest, things along those lines, right? He comes in, and he'd clearly seen the exit sign. Here's a Ramada. It was a Ramada. I can say that safely now. That statute of limitations has long since passed. And said, walked up to the front desk, and he said, "What's your best rate for tonight?" And the person behind the desk said, the guy walked up, and the front desk clerk said, "Do you have a reservation?" He goes, "No. What's your best rate for tonight?" He looks and he goes, $149. He goes, "Really?" And the guy's like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Let me think about it." The lobby bar. And he pulled out his laptop while sitting at the bar, opened up his laptop, went to Expedia, and booked the room for $99. And then walked up and said, "I'd like to check in. I have a reservation."
Yep.
Yes, but back then, hold on, but back then, that reservation probably didn't end up at the hotel until like 7 to 12 hours after the booking, because and a lot of people
had to happen, right?
It depends when they had to check their fax. Yeah.
Well, it was but don't forget, back then Expedia was sending so many faxes that they were queuing it. There was a huge delay on just the fax even going out.
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
And then someone from reservations at the hotel had to manually enter that reservation in and confirm it and send it back to Expedia. So what happened a lot at that time is, yes, that was bad training, and nowadays we laugh at it because a hotel wouldn't hopefully make that mistake. But back then, the answer was actually, "Yes, sir, but we have not received that reservation yet, so you're going to have to wait until we get it from Expedia." And then that person who was like, "Ha, ha, ha, I got you," was like, "What? How long is that going to be?" 7 to 10 hours, sir. We'll have that in 7 to 10 hours. So,
you're not wrong, but at the same time, I mean, game changing.
Right. Well, but that's why I started Easy Yield, because I thought it was ridiculous. Like things like that were happening all the time, and the fact that the consumers saw that you had to be super savvy to get a different rate, and hotels had different rates everywhere, and hotels were evil because they were trying to trick you, because that's how the consumers saw it. And honestly, it was not that the hotels were evil; they were lazy, and they were just like, "I'm gonna give everyone the same net rate. What do I care?" And like, my gosh, it was insane to me, but those were the early times. But yeah, the answer in a lot of hotels, this was the answer. You're right, sir, the $99. You're going to have to wait for Expedia to send that reservation to us before we can check you in. "Oh, when did you make that reservation? Just now? Oh, see you in 7 hours, sir."
Right. But it was all
Holly, you're muted.
Oh, Holly, you're muted.
desk clerks weren't that savvy back then because I was at a property then, and we would have checked him in at his word. Like that's how it went. But
Yeah, nobody stopped
here's
him
my
from
question.
checking in.
I actually want to jump off in a couple minutes because I really want Stuart to come on the show. And why is Lauren
Is
so
he
quiet?
trying? Is Stuart
I
trying?
don't know.
No,
I just sent him a note.
Lauren's not on, but Lauren started the show and we're afraid to turn. He was afraid to cut it off, thinking it would kill the feed. So,
Well, here, if I could sort of fast forward to today, I wanted to talk about, and maybe I misunderstood it. So Hyatt has eliminated the CMO and instead is having the chief commercial officer.
Right.
So have we really come any further in 20 years that we don't recognize the value of marketing, that Hyatt's doing away with marketing? And did I understand correctly that the loyalty guy doesn't report to the chief commercial officer?
Oh, I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah,
on that
I
part
didn't
of it.
get that. Listen, I think the hotel industry as a whole misunderstands marketing in general, and I think that's always been the case. And I got to be honest with you. Like, I got excited. I pick on Hilton sometimes, but Hilton made a move that I've been waiting for some of these companies to make for a long time. They actually hired someone not from Hilton to be their new CMO, and I think that they're going to grow quite a bit from it. Not that any of their previous CMOs weren't good or anything like that, but they hired the CMO from Uber. So if you can do a good job marketing the most evil company in the world, you're going to kill it for Hilton. And like that move, we need to see more of in some of these brands, because I love the brand story of we promote from within, and our entire C-suite started at the ground floor. But here's the thing: if you don't send someone away to see how it's done by people who are good at these things, you're never going to be great. And this is why hotels are bad at email. This is why hotels are bad at certain aspects of marketing. It's because they didn't get a chance to see how it's done by the people who do it the best. Well, guess what? Uber is amazing at email. So that CMO, when she looks at Hilton's email, I wish I was a fly on the wall, because like she's going to be like, you do what now? You use who? What? Like, but talking to these decisions that are being made at these brands, it's because, like, let's face it, they're not looking at their business as I need to be the best at each thing, or I need to at least be top 10 at each thing. They're just looking at whatever their sole purpose is of their business, and they all have different purposes, right? Hyatt, Hilton, they all have a different vision. And they look at the hospitality aspect of that, but they don't look at the fact that you're dealing with consumers, and consumer expectation is being set by companies that are hyper focused on improving what consumer expectation should be. And you can't take people who grew up in the hotel space and expect them to be able to be as good at email as Uber or as Facebook or as Amazon. So what do you need to do? You need to pull some people that have been experienced in what the best looks like and get them into your org, to then improve the training of your org. Because your org is, if you self-trained everyone, if everyone at the top was trained by you, then they're only as good as you were when you stopped learning.
That's right.
And let's face it, you get to a level of executive where you kind of stop learning. Well, because you're detached.
I agree with everything you just said. I also think no. This is a Venn diagram, right? This is, every part of what you said is true. There is also a part of this that I think we need to talk about, and I think it's a place where the brands are doing themselves a massive, massive disservice. They are letting the OTAs drive the conditions by which we judge the success of these companies, which is, are they putting heads in beds only? And a good brand does a lot of things beyond that. A good chain does a lot of things beyond that. There's design. There's access to financing. There's purchasing power. There are a lot of things that you get as a franchisee or as a management company or whatever from a chain that you're not going to get from the OTAs. The OTAs are better at reservations. That's the only damn thing they do.
But that's the only thing the brands seem to talk about.
Well, no, I understand. That's what I'm talking
brands
about.
are the one
That's
making
the
it a
failure
battle.
that the chain. No, that's not true. That's not true. The OTAs started the dialogue that way, and the chains let them.
Right. But
the chains jumped on board and said, "Yeah, you're absolutely right. Derp, derp, derp," and that is a dumb, dumb way to have that conversation. That doesn't mean carrying a flag is right for every property. It doesn't mean being part of a chain is right for every property. It means if you're evaluating an OTA because they put heads in beds and you're evaluating a chain only on heads in beds, you're not looking at the entire picture of what a chain can do for you. Whether or not it should or whether or not that's the appropriate way to get it is another matter. But that is a enormous mistake.
I'm going to be honest with you. It exists as their biggest judge point because the brands have also made moves to stop the properties from having their own influence in their digital marketing. The brands have put up giant walls around these gardens. Hilton eliminating vanity sites. I think Marriott doesn't allow it anymore either, right?
No.
Not allowing
soft brands.
Yeah.
Okay. So not allowing a hotel owner to have any influence over what happens to their business means then you need to be better than other options, or you're going to be judged by the things I'm the most mad about. And oh, by the way, if I'm in a brand that I have no ability to drive my destiny, then yeah, okay, I'm looking past all the amazing things you do for me as a brand because you're screwing up my ability to make money by restricting me from being able to do things, but also by not doing a good job at the things you're restricting me from being able to do. Compared to Expedia, compared to other Airbnb, like all of that. So they not only did the OTA start this conversation, the brands keep biting and making it worse by saying, "Oh, you know what? The customer's ours, hotelier. So you have no right to this customer ever if they come through one of our systems." Okay, I'm going to do my own customers. I'm going to do my own customers just to drive my own and build my own. Oh no, that's not allowed anymore. Oh, okay.
So let's talk about this, right? Because this is, again, everything you said is true. I think it's incomplete because there's a lot of.
Because I said it. I'm crafting an argument.
Right.
Making a point. It's not that.
And there's a lot of problems with that argument, right? First of all, one of the problems you have, and this gets back to where consolidation is ultimately going to be a problem for the chains, is the bigger they get, the fewer exceptions they can allow, because otherwise they screw up brand consistency, and that creates the cause of their own demise from that perspective. There's a lot of legal reasons why in some cases you have to do that. If a guest opts out of email communications from insert brand here and a property has a separate email list and they start sending emails, who gets nailed under canned spam? The brand does, not the property. So there's some factors there that come into play.
It's actually really easy stuff to solve, though. They just don't want to.
Not when you have to do it for 9,000
yes,
properties.
It is easy. There, you can have universal opt-out lists across multiple email platforms.
Yeah, but you have to.
It's not like it used to be. It's a lot easier now.
No, Ed, I know what you're saying. I'm saying, but you have to make sure every vendor is using them, and you have to police all those vendors, right? I mean, there's a lot of pieces to that that are.
Listen, there are brands who do that stuff well. How many PMS vendors does Best Western allow?
A lot.
Right.
I think all of them. Yeah.
I think it's all.
Right.
And yet you don't hear a lot of chat about the problems Best Western has with accepting this. Why? Because they did a good job of framing it on how it works.
Yeah,
no, I don't want to give the excuse of it's hard for why it should be done a crappy way.
The difference there is Best Western is more a soft brand than a full brand. And that's been true forever.
Are you saying that because they don't own any properties?
No. I'm saying that because they don't have. It's an association. They don't have a standard template for the property.
But let's be honest. Half of Hilton's and Marriott's brands now are basically that anyways.
Well, that's where they're going anyway with the soft brand.
Right. So if you're going to go that way, you need to change.
Well, when they go that way, you can have your own website and do all that other stuff. right?
Yeah,
That's
not
there's some strings attached.
yeah. Like you can have your own site if it's done by our internal digital agency, which costs 10 times as much as a normal digital agency will charge you to build a site, and you have to wait.
Now, I'll be fair. I wasn't aware of that. Is that true? Is that a factual statement?
I'm not going to say for who it is, but
if I'm a curio collector, if I am
I'm not going to say who it is.
Portfolio,
but there is a brand that has a soft brand that does allow the properties to have their own sites if it's purchased through their internal digital agency.
But that's one brand with one soft brand.
I'm talking about one I know for sure.
Okay.
I have yet to find evidence that the others aren't going that way. Like it's starting to look more like the others are going, yeah. That's the way to do it.
The problem is with the soft brands, they're getting to the point where it's becoming more brand-like. They now have enough scale where they're trying to get more standards, at least in terms of the digital side deployed. So it just isn't completely different functioning because, again, if people are winding up there, they get disoriented. This site works completely differently from the other, and I thought it was part of the same group. And where do I get my points?
Hey, am I the only one hearing Robert weird?
Robert, I'm weird?
You're weird.
Underwater.
You're
underwater.
You're bubbling.
Okay, yeah. Let's see if I can try to fix that.
But listen, I mean, so this all comes back to why I brought this up. I think Wyndham is the best equipped company to win this battle because they have looked at the right things. They have figured out what it takes to, at scale, have platforms that can compete at scale. They've made decisions, have gone through the pain, and now I think the La Quinta acquisition is a sign of times to come. Because here's the thing. What's Marriott going to do if they go buy Hyatt? Are they going to put everyone on Marcia to then get them off of Marcia? Like, because isn't that what they're doing with Starwood? They threw away Starwood's tech stack to put everyone on a legacy tech stack. That's not how scale brings profitability.
Right.
I see Wyndham as executing on a scale equals profitability plan and actually making the moves to have scale equal profitability. If you're not super strong, if you're not the best operator at 100 hotels, you're not going to be the best operator at 1,000 hotels. Scale does not equal winning.
I sure hope you're right.
No, I mean, listen, I know you can't talk to it, but like this is something, the competitive advantages between the brands is something I look at a lot, and I have looked at my entire adult life. And if you look at the fact that everyone thinks asset light, everyone being the big brands, seem to think asset light is the way they're going to win. Well, I'm sorry. The only brand that's executing a strategy that lines up with that thought process is Wyndham. Because everyone else is on some old cooked up version of Pegasus that they hacked together themselves that speaks to old systems that have something to do with airlines. And Wyndham is executing a strategy going, well, let's see. We add value to hotels by giving them design and purchasing power. And okay, well, maybe we should do the same thing in tech. Let's go figure out tech-wise, what's a good marketing stack for hotels? Great. What's one that stands up against the biggest behemoths in the world? Great. All right, so now we give you good design for your property and good purchasing power. And oh, by the way, one of the best marketing tech stacks that exist. And it's not going to be mismanaged by a CTO that isn't a tech CTO. It's going to be managed by a CTO that's a tech CTO because it's a tech company who gave the technology to make this happen. Like, if you're making the move in the argument that asset light is the future, then your operation needs to change. And I think Wyndham is the only one who's done that.
Well, am I still underwater?
You're still underwater, Robert.
And by the way, I'm certainly not going to disagree with you. There's a reason I'm a shareholder. Holly, you had a comment?
I keep making faces because from a marketing standpoint and a brand familiarity and I don't love Wyndham properties relative to Hilton.
Oh my
Marriott.
God, I love Wyndham Grand properties. Those are the properties that are designed for me. Those are amazing. I love them. And those are basically in between Hilton and Waldorf in quality and design and things like that.
But in terms of market share, market recognition, I don't think Wyndham compares with Hilton and Marriott.
What's the difference
don't
between a
forget their
Marriott
brand.
and a Sheraton?
Actually,
Here's the thing. Previously, I
actually,
agree with
take a different look at this, though. Actually, take a different look at this. Marriott's not going head to head with Milton or Harriet. Hilton or Harriet.
Milton or Harriet.
We're going to use that.
Are those the two old guys from the Muppets?
I think so. I think so.
No, that's Stellar Water.
No, but they're it's very much mid-scale. It's very much select service. If you're going to compare a lot of the Wyndham product to a lot of the the Courtyard product or the things along those lines, then sure, there are Wyndhams and there are Marriotts, and that's absolutely true. With no disrespect to either company, I think Wyndham, the brand, not Wyndham the corporation, has 80 properties or something like that. Like it's a
The smallest hotel collection inside their collection of brands.
Yeah.
Is the
So
name.
comparing
Milton,
Milton to Wyndham
Harriott
is apples and much and apple orchards at the moment.
Right.
Comparing the mid-scale stuff, I would tend to agree.
And
with
let's
them
not forget, with Hilton,
perspective.
what's over 50% of Hilton's hotel count?
Oh, Hampton and
It's Hampton and Homewood.
and Homewood. Yeah, it's all the mid-scale
Right.
stuff. Yeah,
It's all mid-scale stuff.
Fantastic, which are fantastic brands.
Right?
they are.
And
I wouldn't argue
listen,
that. I agree.
I
with
mean,
that.
put them up against
let's fast forward.
portfolio.
But let's fast forward 10 years from now, where Hilton continues to be just a franchise business, if that's the way they're going to go, and Marriott continues to just be a franchise business, because that seems the way they're going to go. I think you're going to see the same type of challenge come up, where as you acquire brands that overlap and you become more of a franchise business, like, you need to think like a franchise business. I think you're going to see some of these companies kind of fall to the same problem that you're saying Wyndham has. But at the same time, I will tell you, with La Quinta, I think La Quinta stands up nicely against Hampton Inn.
What?
Really? Have you not been to any of their recent
La Quinta's
products?
nice properties. There are a lot of nice La Quinta properties.
I'm not talking hotel specialists. I'm talking about general public and their perception
You're
of
talking about
La
brands.
Quinta
You're giving the
versus
general public way too much credit. General public doesn't know the difference.
Oh,
Like,
they do too. Frequent
Non-
travelers know. Frequent
Wait,
travelers
frequent
But
travelers?
mid-scale
That's
is not frequent travelers.
That's right. You're talking about a different market. Mid-scale is not frequent traveler. Mid-scale is like
I'm taking the
leisure-
kids to Disney once
Right.
a year.
And I'm sorry,
This is-
they
this
don't
is
know what a
completely
Hampton
true.
Inn is. They don't know what a Holiday Inn is. They don't know what a La Quinta is. They don't know the difference.
They Ed, I won't go as
Of course
far as
they
you're
do.
going on this. I won't go as far as you are on that. But I can tell you, and again, statute of limitations has passed on this, I'm sure, because I've been gone from Wyndham for 10 years. When I left Wyndham, we had more loyalty members than members, right?
Right.
An active member in our program at the time was literally
Sorry.
somebody who stayed with us 1.5 times per 12-month period. Because we had now don't get me wrong, we had
I think that's
super
the same
active.
measchement that most are using, though. Like, I don't think.
Well, no, we had no. Oh, no. I mean, if you talk about I'm saying the 99.9% of our travelers were folks who stayed, at the Orlando main gate, Disney main gate, or West Gate or what have you, once a year, and came back like clockwork every year. And they were loyal to the brand to a degree because they liked the Super 8 or they liked the Days Inn where they had stayed before. We absolutely had a very small share of very, very active stayers, right? Like we had a lot of folks who were, people don't think of this as a glamorous segment, but it was a hugely important segment for Super 8. We had a lot of long haul truckers who were very active, and we saw every single night.
Incredibly loyal.
But they were, less than they were
Student
a huge
travel
share of our stays.
Student travel groups keep a lot of those brands, Days Inn and Super 8. Like, that's some of those hotels, that's all they get. You have a cat. Tim? I didn't realize that.
We have 2 cats. Oh, hey, Spike, what are you doing? We have 2 cats.
So
Actually, one of
Holly,
our smartest franchisees built a baseball diamond. He was on the I-95 corridor. He's built a baseball diamond and big field on a piece of property out behind his property, and made it a place where, if you were a traveling team, you could stop and you could, if you were a football team or a soccer team or a baseball team or what have you, there was a place for your team to get a practice in while you were on property.
Yeah.
And he made a lot of money doing that.
So, so that's the thing. First of all, the volume of hotel count of Hilton does not have the Hilton name in it. The volume of hotel count of Marriott does not have Marriott. I think Marriott of all of them has the most Marriotts, right? Like
they'll put by Courtyard by Marriott, Residence Inn by Marriott.
Right, but Hampton Inn's by Hilton. But Hilton is more Hampton Inn than they are Hilton. Wyndham, I always laughed. I actually thought the name change to Wyndham was a bad move because it was the smallest chain of all of their franchise systems. It was at the time, the fanciest. It was the highest end.
Right.
But, at the time, I think they were 300 properties were Wyndham, and then they had Hojo, which, I'm sorry, Howard Johnson, I think, is a much more iconic brand as far as history goes. And this is the challenge. And this was the problem even Starwood faced, when they were Sheraton. Like, changing to Starwood was because they were starting to develop brand identities for other brands. And so are you going to have Westin by Sheraton? Like, are you so this is a challenge of a franchising system that has multiple products inside of it. Wyndham has been at that problem, I think, the longest, because they inherited the Cendant timeline.
But the HFS ones even before. That was the genesis of it. Was rolling up Days Inn and Ramada and Hojos and all the Super 8s and all the others.
From a brand recognition standpoint, the most recognizable brands in travel, I think, are the lowest end brands in travel. Like Motel 6, we'll leave the light on, right? That's them. Yeah. So if you want to talk about brands that most people...
you don't want you're buying any of this, so feel free to push back.
I'm really not, because I'm looking at this list of Wyndham brands, and what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to do a stat comparison of Hilton's and their level and where they fall on the star report and compare, and I'm telling you, Hilton and Marriott's done a better job with their brand development. You said design, they make design easier, they make everything easier, and I disagree. They may have focused on their tech stack, but I think...
No. Listen, I'm talking about the new Hilton and the new Marriott, who no longer own hotels. So let's not forget, a lot of the way brand control has been kept up is the fact that a lot of their brands, they owned a lot of them. They owned a lot of those assets, and the ones they didn't own were owned by like 3 other companies that were tightly knit with Marriott. So Wyndham is a real franchise system. So what is Marriott and Hilton's identity going forward if they are no longer hoteliers? Well, they're franchise companies. If they're going to be franchise companies, they need to understand the complete window of what it takes to be competitive. And I'll give you a perfect example of it. You want to know what brand I think Marriott is most jealous of? Is DoubleTree. Why? Go ahead. Do it.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Why?
No. I understand why you're going to say that, but I don't think Marriott is actually jealous of that. I think
really Delta.
Yeah. So,
Delta is all about trying to create DoubleTree for Marriott.
Right. Absolutely.
So that you can't say they weren't jealous of it if they weren't like, crap, we really need a brand like that. Oh, we have Delta. Like, let's make Delta that brand. So DoubleTree allows Hilton to be a legit franchise company. How so, you may ask? Well, they have used DoubleTree to board properties that do not meet the brand standards of any of their brands at all. Like, so it can't be a Hilton, it can't be a Hampton, it can't be a Homewood, it can't be a Waldorf Astoria, it can't be a Curio. Well, what can it be?
But it's got 600 rooms just south of 42nd Street in New York, and
and so,
a good price point. Yeah.
Until your next renovation, you can be a DoubleTree. You just got to add cookies to what you're doing, and you can be a DoubleTree. That's been very successful for Hilton as a franchise company above the
Right.
mid-scale, right?
Yeah, it's
Because-
interesting though.
Yeah, I mean,
the reason I was going to say it, the reason I was going to say that Marriott wasn't. Am I still underwater?
No, you're perfect.
Hopefully
Tim
not.
is frozen.
Oh, good.
You're good.
Okay.
Very pensive.
I think it's a webinar. I think this is a webinar jam issue because I rebooted, but my connectivity was great. So who the hell knows? But with
Am I
Starwood
frozen
acquisition,
Yeah, you're still frozen. Go ahead.
But it's a good
4
look.
points. 4 points was a problem though. I mean, Starwood did not execute well on 4 points with that same strategy. Here's the catch-all, but it was a real mess, right?
Well,
And
because
so
you had 4
Marriott
points.
still-
You had some 4 points that were as nice as Weston's, and then you
Yeah.
had some 4 points that wouldn't even qualify to be the lowest rated hotel in any brand's
Right.
collection, and that was
Right.
the problem. It was
Yeah.
like brand identity, and when they and that was at the same time they were allowing Sheraton franchise to kind of go long in the tooth on their refresh cycles
Right.
and brand standards. So you had this bleeding together of, am I staying at a 4 points that's nicer than a Sheraton, or am I staying at a Sheraton that's worse than a 4 points? I don't know what I'm getting. And that realignment was painful for them. Like fixing that was really tough. I mean, at least from what I can see with what Hilton's doing with DoubleTree is they have off-ramps, and in their deals, they're saying to them, on your next major renovation, you got to go to another brand inside the collection,
Right.
but we're boarding you with DoubleTree.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think also Wyndham clearly understands their 2 key constituencies, right? Which are the hotel owners, who are the guys who are paying all those franchise fees, and the customer. So what have they done? They didn't follow all the other hotel brands to do this discount the rate thing, which I think was brilliant because in many cases, their brands are already the lowest price ones. So it's just ridiculous to go play that discount. It just hurts the owners, right? It doesn't do anything for them. They also enriched their loyalty program to the point where it's pretty compelling. I mean, you can go stay, whatever, I think it's 7 nights or 8 nights, whatever the number of nights is, at a Days Inn and then stay at a Wyndham Grand, right?
No,
sort of
even
thing.
better. What's the super high-end brand they have? Because they have that super high-end brand. It starts with an S, right?
Super 8?
No, they acquired a really high-end brand a few years ago. I forget which one it is.
Super high-end,
okay.
I don't know.
Dolce. So you can stay
Dolce?
7 nights at
Dolce.
Days Inn and get a night at a Dolce. Like, some of those Dolce.
Yeah.
Sure.
Some of the Dolce is kind of mixed. What's what?
Ho Seasons. HOSEAN SEASONS. Ho Seasons.
Yeah, that's is that Latin American? I can't remember. I think it's an international.
Can you guys hear me, or Steve?
We can kind of hear you a little bit.
Kind of hear
you.
you.
Frozen, and Tim, you're frozen like this.
But you look very thoughtful.
Distinguished.
It's a good look. Okay,
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can hear you
Okay.
now.
All right.
So
I'm
one
trying to
of the
find-
things I'd like to. Oh, go ahead.
I'm trying to find, and one of you must have the numbers. I can't find numbers on. One of the problems why it's tough to compare across chain scales, harder than we think, is there. Last I knew, there were more economy, mid-scale, and upper mid-scale rooms in each of those categories than there were in upscale, upper upscale, or luxury, and the numbers were pretty immensely
It's a huge
different.
difference. Yeah.
However, because the ADR is so much lower, the revenues in those chain scales are lower than the revenues in the other ones.
Right.
So when we talk about what's the biggest and where's all this, that's tough to say. In one of the releases around this move, they did talk about the fact of how much growth there is in economy, mid-scale, and upper mid-scale. And that's one of the reasons why La Quinta is attractive. You know, you look at the launch of brands like True, you look at the launch of brands like, what's a good example? Avid Hotels, right, from Intercom. A lot of hotel companies are looking to try to get into this space in a bigger way.
And
So,
La Quinta's a great
again,
brand for that.
And La Quinta's a great brand for that. You know.
Oh, and by the way,
and
by
it
acquiring
tends to be
La Quinta-
recession-proof.
By acquiring La Quinta, you get a lot of inside knowledge of what made Hilton successful. Because let's not forget who owned La Quinta and who owned Hilton at the same time and created synergies between those companies by taking what each learned and helping the other one out.
Yeah.
Blackstone.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'm going to go out on a limb and make a bold prediction, and I could end up with egg all over my face.
Well, since no one can see you.
Exactly. If we go forward a bunch of years, I think we run into a situation where you have a bunch of mid-scale chain properties, and you got a whole bunch of independent soft brand properties. Like if I'm developing a new 4-star property and I have a choice between hanging a flag on it or operating it under my own name, whatever I choose, a lot of people, I think, as they go forward, are going to opt for running it under their own name.
And that's such a competitive market now because you have, I mean, have you been paying attention to Best Western's move in their soft brands and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Man, they've got some great properties under there. Like, it blew me away on how upscale some of their soft brands are.
Right. And the owners are looking at it because they get a haircut on the fees, which they love. And it gives them flexibility and some leverage when that, they certainly aren't as long-term deals as some of the others. You don't have all the signage and all the investment that goes in with that. So all of a sudden you come up for renewal and it's like, hey guys, I can switch. The barrier, the switching barrier is much, much lower, and that's very, very owner friendly, especially when you're giving them all the reservation connectivity and all the stuff and the rewards programs and all those sorts of goodies. So one thing I'd like to talk about. Quickly, host seasons. It's not Latin American. It's holiday parks and things like that from the UK. It's it's actually a good group. They are very, very positive. They have very, very devoted clientele who do a good job. Yeah, but very unknown over here. Who knows if they'll ever expand? Well, yeah, but they've got a ton of product over there, and it's well known in the UK. But what I want to do is talk about
Tim, you got to shut off. Your video's frozen, and we can't hear your audio when you're.
When the video's off, is that better?
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
I think that the holiday park stuff goes with whatever the spun off.
I think it goes with the vacation rental stuff.
Timeshare business, it's vacation rental stuff. I don't think that's going with the hotel company, by the way. I don't know that, but I think that runs.
I think you're right.
Side.
Yeah.
If I could ask another question, then moving into, so you sent the mega trends that Skift put out, and which I thought was so funny. Hotels need to be everything to everyone. Is the mega trend for next year. So with the
incorrect,
massively incorrect, and a really bad idea.
Yeah.
But in terms,
Skift put out something that was bad advice for hotels. Stop it.
You need to be everything to everyone.
See, I got to be nice to Skift. I'm in their next report, so if I bash them too badly, I'd guilt by association.
Who paid for this Skift study of megatrends?
A lot of hotel groups and brands. Yeah.
No, but who really paid for
Accor.
But one of the big topics there was how hotels are becoming so experience based. And so if what you're saying is true, Robert, and the trend will go to independent, more soft brands, do we lose or can we win that way in the hospitality industry?
I think you can win that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I think you win. You win because that. Oh, no. You want the hotels, especially the more you go up the ladder, the chain scale ladder, you want those hotels to be strongly tied to the personality of that destination, right?
Yep.
To
like,
provide
look at
really tied into the local.
Look at Relais and Chateau.
Absolutely.
Super high-end collection of hotels that do not have a single matching identity across them, but I would stay at any of those given the chance because the ones I've been to, they are just amazing experiences.
Yeah, they're
what
fabulous.
Are you shaking your right? So
they're fabulous.
Right. So the point is, like, I got to be honest with you.
Westerns.
I got to be honest with you. I look at some of these luxury brands, that especially the new builds of some of these luxury brands, and they're slightly nicer big box versions of the mid-scale brand with like a spa.
Right.
But their rooms,
Absolutely.
their mattresses, like they're missing the luxury part of luxury.
Well,
and
luxury
they-
is
and they
serv-
get the
is the service. The service
They
is what
get
gives you the
service
ADR.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
right, for
But
sure.
you would say I'd stay at any relay. I totally am buying that because you know the strict standards. Would you say the same as I would stay at any Best Western luxury property?
No, I don't
Depends
know.
on how well they execute on that,
It
right?
depends.
That's-
Best
for
Western
them,
has
I will
some
say,
great properties in Europe.
Who's in
Some
it
great.
so far?
Absolutely.
Who's in it so far? And for like the type of stay that I would look for, which would be with my family, yes, I would. Because I've stayed at a few of them, and so far, who's in it, I would. And who's
So I want to
like absolutely. Like
So I want to say two things real quickly. One, speaking from a leading hotels of the world background,
Right.
yeah, hells yeah, this matters a lot, right? And it's all about service. But taking a step back at a more broad discussion, there's a phenomenal book. I read this book years ago. I reread it every couple of years, and it proves right every time I read it. There was a book written in like 98 or 99 by guys named Carl Shapiro and Hal Varian. If you don't know who Hal Varian is, let me make sure you're aware. At the time, he was a Stanford economics professor. Today, he is the chief economist for Google, right?
so
And he basically,
he's smart.
he's
He's
a
a smart
reasonably smart dude. Oh, look at the puppy.
They're back.
He's a really smart guy. We have a special guest on the show today. What a good puppers.
And I want
okay.
to hear his opinion. Tim, stop. What's the dog have to say?
Henry.
He's
what
all
do you-
Henry.
Kimpton. He's all Kimpton.
But-
isn't
Yeah.
he? Library collection.
Yeah.
But what tends to occur because of the way the network works, because of the way mobile works, etc., there are only two winning strategies. You become an aggregator where people can go to get everything, or you have to be differentiated. Period.
Yep.
And so if you're just a box of rooms and you're just we've lost Holly. Holly's
Yeah, you're answering you're profoundly answering Holly's main argument.
profoundly
She takes
answering
her headphones
Holly's
off.
question, and she takes her headphones off. She's like, "No,
Dog
Holly.
walker.
Here's the thing. Two things, right? There's only two ways to win. When people have access to all the information, when the way we have always succeeded, the way businesses have always succeeded, is there's been an information disparity between the seller and the buyer. We knew more than they did, and today
Good
that
old
is
days.
no longer true. That is no longer true, right?
Yep.
In fact, usually the buyer knows more than the person who's selling because they have more incentive to care.
Yep.
Right? So when everybody knows everything about everything, the only way you win is either you become an aggregator, you become the choice where people go because they can get access to everything. Think Amazon, think Expedia, think Netflix, think Uber,
Alibaba.
right? Think Alibaba. Think this, by the way, goes back to why we were talking about why Airbnb's adding air last week, because they need to become an aggregator where you go for everything. Or you have to be distinctly different. You have to be purely differentiated. And I have a very specific definition of differentiation, which is it's not something that makes you a little bit different or a little bit distinct. It's a difference that people are willing to pay for.
Correct.
If
Right.
they're not willing to pay you more for it, then it's just quirky or interesting, but it doesn't have any value for you as a business. And
Right.
so you have to be different. And so, just being a box of 3.5-star or 4-star rooms that look like every other box on the street, you're going to fail. You are flat out going to fail.
Right.
You have to be something that people need and want and are willing to pay more for.
Or-
and if you're just like
the
the box of rooms across the or the aggregator, which is what
Those are the
Wyndham's
two
trying to do, what
strategies.
Marriott's trying to do, and what Expedia is trying to do, and what all the other folks are trying to do. But that's the only way you win.
But none of you think that the brand's investing in research. I mean, a lot like a core is doing. Like
Well, that's what they're trying to do. They're becoming an aggregator.
Right.
No. In terms of the product that they're putting out there, so that it's not just a 3.5-star box, that the brand standards are that every hotel has this community area that the brands are doing research and making it a brand standard to make their hotels more experience friendly.
Yep, and this is
because they're trying to differentiate what that brand is.
Right.
right.
And a lot of that research is just knocking off hotels that are doing good jobs, that are independent and really good
Pimpton.
stuff, right?
Let's look at
Pimpton, Citizen M, Yotel.
Citizen M.
You go through the ones who, they're doing great stuff, and they're going, hey, that's a good idea. We can do that. We can do that too. So.
Right. So, like the paid for research, come on.
And who's going to execute on that more effectively in the long run? A chain that has to roll it out across 100 properties or 200 properties or 300 properties, or an individual hotel who can change on a dime and say, okay, we need to, you know what I mean?
No. I'm disagreeing because think back to several hours ago when this call started. You talked about the individual hotels providing crap content, and it wasn't until Expedia came along. So isn't this the same thing? Isn't this the brands
those individual hotels providing crap content were working with the aggregator who saw the ability to have success by taking those individual hotels with crap content and pulling them together. So to Robert's argument, as a brand, as a Marriott, not as a hotelier, as a Marriott type brand, you're either going to have to play the role of aggregator or there'll be independence.
And there were plenty of small brands then, the Library Collection, Kimpton, folks like
Omni,
that who did
Mandarin Oriental,
Chateau, Kempinski, there were a bunch that did it well. Yeah. Right.
Millennium
there were a bunch that did it well. They weren't, with no disrespect, our friends at, Harriet and Milton.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, one thing I want to mention. Let's look at who, especially because we kind of started off on Hyatt eliminating the CMO position and Hilton bringing in.
I thought we started out on Wyndham buying.
Actually,
we did.
By the way,
did.
Can we talk about that for 1 second? Hyatt did not eliminate the CMO position. That is a terrible headline. They are adding a chief commercial officer who's basically doing all the things the CMO did plus one more thing.
A CRO is the modern approach to a CMO.
Yeah.
They are eliminating the CMO. I mean, they're rolling
it into.
Yeah, and they're giving it to a chief commercial operations person, and it's sales, marketing.
No. That's not what the article says at all. They are getting rid of, unless I misread the article, they got rid of the CMO. The CMO is leaving. They are taking all the operations stuff and putting it under the president of the brand, and also creating a new chief commercial officer who reports to the CEO of the company. That's the new CMO.
Who's going to have sales, marketing.
I think it was operations, I believe.
Hold on 1 second. I'm looking for the
call
article.
Center.
Right. Hold on.
Yes, because here's the thing. If you don't have those things, you do not have all the channels of which your customers are transacting with you. And the modern approach to marketing is understanding the diversity of your channels and understanding what channel mix makes most sense at what time. And a lot of CMOs didn't come up that path. They came up the...
So this is the
non-technical marketing path.
Right. No.
Here's
okay. So here, in their place,
summary.
Here it is.
Here's the hotel marketing summary. Go ahead, Robert.
No. Here's the new position. Okay. The company is creating a new chief commercial officer position and consolidating its managed and franchised hotel operations and owner relations into a single portfolio to be led by its current global president of operations, Chuck Floyd. Chuck Floyd's been with Hyatt, operator for a long time, joined him in 1981, right? He's a Hyatt lifer. That's where everything is going in. It's operations, owner relations, franchised and managed and marketing, all under that one.
No. I'm looking at the hotel marketing article, and what it says is the key changes expected to be completed in the second quarter include the formation of a new commercial services portfolio at the executive committee level that will combine guest and customer engagement functions under a new chief commercial officer position. Further, the company is also consolidating managed and franchised hotel operations into one portfolio, reporting to Chuck Floyd, Global President of Operations.
Yep.
If
So
you
they're
scroll
breaking
down
all their
further-
silos.
They're
breaking the silos, but this says the new, well, I don't know, I'm looking again at the Skift article, which I think this came out of, we need to look at the Hyatt release.
You're reading the fake news.
Yeah.
No. Deanna is absolutely fine at Skift. I have no issues with Deanna at all.
And it says the new chief, this is the release.
We'll include oversight of global sales, marketing, contact centers, and information technology, and report directly to Hoplamazian. I can never pronounce his name. Hoplamazian.
Right.
What's your issue with that, Holly? Why do you think that's wrong?
They're hoping to appoint a new chief commercial officer in the second quarter,
who will report directly to the CEO. They did not eliminate the CMO. They just renamed it the chief commercial officer, and are bringing somebody else in to run and added some scope.
Chief commercial officer who oversees contact centers, sales, marketing is very different from a CMO. Very different.
Actually, so interestingly enough, at Wyndham Worldwide, and I happen to know this because this is my wife's boss, the chief marketing officer runs call centers, distribution, marketing, sales.
That's all your channels. That's all your channels of business.
That's all Hyatt's doing.
Yeah.
That's all Hyatt is doing.
The historical role of the CMO has changed. And so with that, you're seeing different types of positions coming up in orgs that kind of absorb what the CMO was doing, but also puts it with, analytical knowledge, operational knowledge, because marketing is not an art. Marketing is science. That's been proven a gazillion times over. But the problem is a lot of traditional organizations didn't adjust their structure, that you can't have this artist as a CMO anymore. You need a CMO that is a very hybrid talent and oversees all the channels of business, all the interfacing aspects of your business that interface with your customers need to be in a single collection, not these hard silos that you can't poke through. And that's how some of these orgs ended up, is where their contact centers was a walled garden that don't dare cross if you're e-distribution, and for some reason Expedia and those relationships are handled by someone completely different than who does the direct channel. And you had all these weird silos that made no sense, where quite honestly they're just channels. They're channels of which you interface with different customers of yours, and they need to be aligned, and all the data needs to flow up so correct decisions can be made.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Actually, here, I'm reading the Hyatt release, and I can say, the Hyatt release is much better. And Deanna blew it. So sorry, Deanna.
You need to talk to her because, you pushed back hard on my Skift fake news thing, but
But okay, so they're doing a new chief commercial officer. But one of the things that I think Holly brought up before is that loyalty does not report to the chief commercial officer. It reports directly to the CEO as well, which is a little bit of an odd change, as well as Alex Zoglin, who's their chief technology officer as well.
Actually, no, I think that's. So loyalty reports into the CMO at Wyndham, and again, I don't want to tread on dangerous ground here, but here's why I think this is smart. First of all, one of the big mistakes people make in the industry a lot is loyalty is not a channel. Loyalty goes across all the channels and is separate from the channel. And especially if what we were talking about before, in fact, is true. And, you get a whole bunch of independents that may carry soft brands, and you get a bunch of chains in the economy and mid-scale segment and things along those lines. That one of the things that will make the soft brands most effective is the loyalty program. If you don't have a loyalty program and a good tech stack and a good marketing stack, you don't compete in the future as a brand, soft and or other. Acknowledging that that's strategic and reports to the CEO makes a lot of sense from that perspective.
I think you run into problems trying to find a CCO who's going to be the chief commercial officer who isn't overseeing that thing. Most of the people I would know who would be a candidate for that, especially coming outside of the industry, would go, hell no.
Well, listen,
Yep.
just
Right,
because
that's
they're
just- no, I don't-
attempting
I'm not
structure
gonna do
doesn't mean this is how the cards are going to fall.
Yeah,
That's
I think
exactly
that's a bad. I think that's a bad play for Hyatt to separate that out. And I know Alex Zoglin is going to report the CEO because he's not going to report to anybody else, right? That's just Alex, right? That's not going to happen. In terms of the head of loyalty, though, I think you want that in the commercial organization because that is how do you maximize that customer lifetime value, and you need that strategy tightly integrated with it. But anyway, okay, so they're out shopping. They blew up the organization. They're now out looking for or their marketing organization. They're now looking for a chief commercial officer. So they're basically doing a do-over on the marketing because Miriam wasn't there very long. So I don't know, but let's look at that compared to what Hilton's doing though.
Let me
hold
ask
on, Robert. Let Holly ask the question.
Okay.
In that role of chief commercial officer, do you think this person's background really is going to be a strong marketer, or do you think it's going to be a much more strong operations or analyst?
Not going to be operations or it's got to be marketing.
No.
It's got to be. How do you? Yeah.
I bet not.
Or I'm going to look at I'm going to call out Barry at Wyndham because I know him and I think he's a really smart guy. He came with the Dolce acquirtion. He came out of the digital space.
And he was at Starwood before that.
Space. And he was at Starwood before that. Yeah. First of all, digital and marketing are the same thing today. Anybody who talks about marketing and isn't talking about digital missed the boat. So I think they're going to come out of marketing, but it's not marketing like I worked at an agency years ago and wrote copy. Right. It's I understand distribution, I understand digital, I understand search, I understand content, I understand web, I understand mobile, I understand channels,
pricing, I understand product, I understand I understand product, I understand pricing, I understand engagement, customer experience, all that stuff, the whole
But most importantly, I understand managing teams across multiple leading teams across multiple aspects of a business and because let's face it, a chief commercial officer is a CEO in training.
Absolutely.
Okay. Probably, yeah. They're not quite there like to where a public company would be like, yeah, that's our CEO, but you know what, they're going to be a CEO at some point,
which is a different skill set than a marketer, and that's where I think
disagree.
I don't know. Yeah.
I completely disagree.
Let's look outside.
So you're going to tell me, wait, Dara from Expedia, you don't think Dara was a good marketer?
You can come up with exceptions, but
I think
I think marketing people have to be fantastic leaders. I think CEOs have an operations bent to them that
not always
is a problem that we have within the hotel industry.
A lot of them are CFOs. Yeah.
I disagree. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. I think, and Holly, this is a fundamental flaw we have in the industry again and again and again and again and again. Right? In this industry, we have distribution, and in this industry, we have rev management. And in this industry, we have operations. And in this industry, we have marketing. Well, if you remember the 4 Ps of marketing from school, that's product, price, place, promotion. And when we talk about marketing in the industry, we mostly talk about promotion and we ignore the other 3. A good marketer understands all of those.
Absolutely.
If you work at P&G and you run the brand at P&G, you understand where it is sold, you understand what it is sold for, you understand the distribution, you understand how the product is made and formulated.
You understand the supply chain, supply chain, everything.
And you become a CEO look at all the CEOs out there who grew up in the marketing manager or product marketing function at P&G, and there are a metric crap ton of them, and you don't see them in the hospitality industry near enough.
Right.
And that's a huge miss.
Right. So but I also let's not quabble over titles. Like what they're trying to accomplish and what the movement is going to is breaking silos that shouldn't exist. And I'm all for it. We may disagree with like some of the ways they're placing things, but really, if you look under what they're trying to accomplish, they're trying to break old silos that no longer function well inside the modern landscape of how business is done. And they're recognizing that the way their organization had CMO, that person was no longer what they needed that person to be. Not the person in the job, the person in the description. And so they rehashed it. And if you actually look at what a modern CMO needs to be, it does not fit the current mold of what people think CMOs are, because CMOs are mostly pictured as what the old school version of a CMO was. And that's not how things work anymore.
No, and look at who Hilton picked. Helen Smith Kenny, right?
Yep.
Started out, Northwestern MBA. Thanks, Seth. Do you have any comments on this? Seth wants to. Now, that was it. He wanted to make the point. He likes Northwestern, apparently. I don't know, but senior consultant, tech consultant for Accenture, right? So that's a great job for an MBA straight out of school. Marketing manager for Open for American Express. So that wasn't very long, but then went to Microsoft and spent in product management, senior marketing manager, business manager, group marketing manager, director of sales for stores, Windows consumers, Apple Compete, Windows, really deep on that. Then went to Capital One, senior director of brand strategy, VP of brand strategies, SVP of marketing. Right, that's another great organization to learn from. And then a couple of years at Uber, which was probably a complete shit show, especially being a woman in that environment. But hey, she lasted 2 years. That's a great resume for someone to come into Hilton. I gotta say,
she is going to.
I am bullish. Bullish on her ability. I mean, it's her.
I wouldn't be surprised if you see her sometime in the near future in the CEO position of Hilton.
Right. Yep. Oh yeah.
And by the way, we can pick somebody close to home too, folks. A lot of us know in the industry, whose resume was mostly at one company, but follows a very similar trajectory. Is our old friend Sarah Kennedy Ellis, who just left Sabre. Right. Sarah Kennedy Ellis came up as, she was a market manager. She was in product marketing. She started out in marketing communications, right? Then ran their R&D lab, then ran global product marketing, then became the VP of digital experience, and now has left and become the chief marketing officer for marketing automation platform Marketo.
Right. So which is a great role for her, because she is. I've been a huge Sarah Kennedy Ellis fan for years and a decade.
And by the way, I do feel it's incredibly important, since you couldn't see my head bobbing relentlessly because my video's crapped out today. But what Ed said before about the changing role of the CMO is spot on. I could not possibly agree more.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. CMO nowadays is CEO in training. It's someone capable of running the whole org, but has a strong
running
ability.
the go to customer part of the org,
right?
As opposed to the.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think traditionally, and in the future, it really is. You're going to have the finance kind of deal path, right? So you got the financial guys who go, and especially when companies have to go public and things like that. I mean, I think a lot of that winds up tipping to those folks who can go talk to the street and handle all of that very confidently.
The killers in corporate are the people capable of doing every job.
Exactly.
That's the new dynamic in corporate. If you're capable of being the head of HR, the VP of finance, the VP of marketing, the VP of revenue, the VP of janitorial services, if you can do all of those jobs, you're the most valuable player in a corporation. And I think more and more people are coming up that path. And that's like the point that Robert was making. This is why you see a lot of people coming out of the big consultancy firms, because they're experts over all aspects of business. They have to be, because otherwise they're a one-dimensional product for their overlords that are billing them out. So they have to be good at everything. So it's the entrepreneur who figured out how to deal with the garbage of a large corporation. That's what you need to be. You need to be able to be creative inside the stymied environment of large corporations, and that's That's a special person, and that's not a person who only can do one dimension of the business. It needs to be someone who can run it all. Yeah. And that's the CRO, the CCO. These new positions you're seeing are those people that are capable of doing that.
Right. And at Hilton, you're seeing the CMO didn't come up through food and beverage or rooms operations or anything like that because they don't own or run the hotels anymore.
Right.
So, and when you do, if you're an organization that owns and runs those hotels, by God, yes, you better have
hospitality at the top,
strong operational chops, or you will kill your organization.
And the ops folks, by the way, are moving into the roles, and I think that's what we're seeing with Chuck at Hyatt, of managing the relationship with the hotel owners. Right. It's if you think about it, it's two different customers you have to appeal to. You have to appeal to the hotel owner, and you have to appeal to the guest. And the chief commercial officer, chief marketing officer, whatever, is focused on finding, attracting, and bringing the guest to the property. And then the person who's responsible for operations is working with the owners to ensure that they're actually delivering on that service standard and delivering on the promise that was made to the guest all along the way.
Yeah.
By the way, I just noted the time. It is 1 o'clock Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. I'm 11 o'clock Mountain, and that means I've got a haul.
But what time is it?
Actually, we got a couple comments. Hang on, we've been ignoring our comments. Oh, we've got a lot. We've got some great people on this thing. I'm liking the Facebook. The Facebook thing, actually, when you come on, I think everybody needs to share. It's on Facebook because then it will activate your community. But we've had, Charles from Group Eyes was on. Mine at, Osborne was
Del Ross.
Tony Pusateri. Yep, Del Ross. So, so Del had a whole bunch of
Sorry, Del, we were ignoring you, man.
I know. 50% of former CPG marketers are entering the hotel industry fail, which is a very good and absolutely good point because, it's this whole thing of perishable product they really struggle with.
Del, you definitely have to get on here.
Yeah. And he says in big hotel chains, leaders are coming from CFOs or franchise sales development leaders, and that is true because they're out there building the brand. I mean, and I haven't brought up Four Seasons yet. The Four Seasons made a really interesting move with Alan Smith, a prudential real estate guy, a REIT guy, basically, to come in and head that, which was definitely a very strong operationally oriented business. But they've also been losing a lot of people. They've lost a huge number. They just lost another person just this past week. So I don't know. That's an interesting approach, but. He said the industry likes specialists and struggle with generalists. So, yeah.
I have to go too. I didn't realize how late it was. Time does fly hanging on this show with you guys.
Hey.
I have a lot of homework to do this week.
We got to two news items. So.
Two. That's amazing.
Wait.
It's because I
hang on. I've got one more. I always want to close the show with Rutrow. Okay.
Oh.
And this one is particularly for the benefit of Tim and myself. If I can make this copy, robo-advisors are coming to consulting and corporate strategy.
I always do your Rutrow first.
And I'm going to do a shameless self-promotion here. As I sometimes am wont to do. I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago that said AI will not steal your job. Smart people
that was a very
who know
nice
how to use AI will. I'm not worried about the robo-advisors. I'm planning to make use of them myself. So I'm not worried about it in the least.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that was a very
I agree
good
with
podcast.
that. I mean, it's funny, but if you look at it, revenue consultants, they use automation and technology as part of their revenue consult. Well, at least the really good ones do. And then a lot of them hang their hat on helping organizations deploy revenue decision engines. And then they're
they should.
If you're a consultant that isn't at the forefront of what it actually is going to take to sustain your value, by AI and product and all of that stuff, then yeah, you probably should be concerned about this, and maybe should look at what can you do to start bringing technology into what you bring to your clientele. Because there will come a day that if your only value is answering questions based on what's available for knowledge, like that's going away. Like if that's all you're doing as a consultant, yeah, you're gonna get eaten. But you weren't that good of a consultant, anyways. So
or just your unfounded opinion that isn't based on any sort of data is not a good goal for folks.
Right. A
lot of people come and ask me about being a consultant, and most of the time I say, you may not want to do it because you've got to go grab a lot of you can't just make a statement, and Tim certainly knows it. You can't just say, yeah, I think that would be really cool. And no,
Right.
If people take that advice and you screw up their company, that's not a good outcome for long-term success in this business. Yeah, you better have your facts together and do the homework. And if you can get some automation to help you do that and to figure out signals that maybe other people don't. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I have tracked STR's weekly occupancy rate and RevPAR numbers since 2006, and I talked to equity analysts, and I talked to actually two groups relatively regularly, one in the internet space and one in the hospitality space, and that's it. I go back to it and I go, yeah, I track it totally different from any of you guys. I'm doing 52 weeks, 13 weeks and a quarter. I'm looking at 52-week moving averages, but I will put my numbers against STRs almost any day. It's based on STR data, but again, I think I've got some stuff in the way I track it to see that they don't, and at least that's the feedback I get. But yeah, and that's not a lot of fun keeping track of all that stupid stuff and coming up with new analyses. But you have to if you're going to differentiate yourself.
One of the things I was thinking earlier is we need to get Mark Lamano back on this show, because I want him to address the Wyndham brands versus the Hilton and Marriott brands. And also, I do have to go because I have a lot of homework to do for next week. I'm going to research this whole CMO thing because I think you guys are wrong. Bye.
Oh! As she drops the mic.
Nice. Hey, this was a fun show, guys. I think we we covered a lot of topics across an hour and a half. I mean, it's impressive. All right, well, gents, I'm actually going to bow out too because I'm covering for my director of sales who's on medical leave, so I have to do her demos.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I have a real job for the next week.
Poor Flip too. They'll be sitting there going, "Why did sales dip for a couple of weeks? What the hell?
Why were there no follow-ups to anyone?"
Exactly.
So there's no notes in Salesforce for this entire 2-week period.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's great.
Oh, well, by the way, I showed, because everyone's pets made a cameo. I did have to show the new kitten and his best friend Gordon. Oh, they instant best friends. So
wow.
Because I'm in an office, so my cats aren't here.
So. Well, you should have a pet-friendly office, Ed. What kind of culture?
We do. There's a dog running around here somewhere, but you don't bring cats.
Oh, with the cats and dogs, yeah. No,
well, you don't bring cats out of a house, like they don't.
I have seen cat leashes, sort of.
I have too.
I don't know.
You know what my cats do when you put a leash on them?
I've never tried.
Yeah. So, all right. So with that, I will also bid adieu. If you want to learn more about Flip2, it's flip.to. And if you want to see me on social media, it's Edward St Onge.
Very good. And Tim?
Tim's gone.
Is Tim gone? Tim is gone. Oh, he left his photo for us for posterity. Yes. Isn't that nice? So we have Lauren Gray, who was here very briefly at the beginning from Hospitality Digital Marketing, and not just Lauren Gray on. Actually, on Twitter, there are two Lauren Grays.
Yeah.
Yes. It's easily confused. Very similar.
He's the middle-aged man, Lauren Gray, not the teenage girl, Lauren Gray. So,
exactly.
FYI.
Exactly. Yep. And
then Robert, if people want to find about you.
Rock Cheetah
on Twitter, right?
Boy, there's 1,600 people who are very, very bold and like a lot of Twitter traffic. But no, do not recommend following Rock Cheetah on Twitter, but rockcheetah.com is a website, or Robert K. Cole in terms of virtually all social media.
All right. And with that, we will bid you all adieu. Have a great weekend.
Very good. See you next week.